Hello. Today I will be talking about the minimum wage, which I feel is an often heavily debated topic and sometimes it can be even controversial. So, just to give a quick off-time roadmap as to what I will be talking about, first I would like to discuss why a minimum wage is necessary, and then I would like to go into the question of whether the minimum wage should be increased. So, first off, as to why a minimum wage is necessary. Well, as Catholics, we recognize the dignity of work and the rights of workers. Work fulfills human dignity by providing the needs of oneself and family. And this idea is especially prevalent in papal encyclicals like Rerum Novarum and in other forms of Catholic social teaching or CST. One of the rights of workers is the right to fair payment. As outlined by the Second Vatican Council, CST holds that remuneration for work should guarantee man the opportunity to provide a dignified livelihood for himself and his family on the material, social, cultural, and spiritual level, taking into account the role and productivity of each, the state of the business, and the common good. It's important to note here that merely having a minimum wage is not enough. It must also be sustainable so that the worker can comfortably live off of it and provide for himself and his family, if applicable. Who protects the rights of the workers? The state. As St. John the 23rd explained, the state has a duty to protect the rights of all people, and particularly its weaker members, or the workers. It can never be right for the state to shirk its obligation of working actively for the betterment of the condition of the working man. So, if a worker is being treated unfairly, then it should be up to the state to defend the worker's rights. How is all this relevant to the minimum wage question, you may ask? Well, utilizing the guidelines offered by CST, the current minimum wage is proven to be unjust. We have established that workers need a basic income substantial enough to provide the worker a dignified livelihood for himself and his family. This includes being able to pay for any essentials like food, rent, and medical bills. And according to MIT's living wage calculator, the current federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is not enough for full-time workers to cover the basic expenses in any state in the union. A single person without kids making the federal minimum wage and working full-time with no time off or vacations makes about $3,000 above the poverty line. With dependents, meaning essentials like the ones stated earlier, added in, they fall below it. And this is obviously much worse for people with families, as they not only have to provide for themselves, but also put food on the tables for their children and provide for others overall. So the current minimum wage also makes life transitions much harder. Many of the younger low income workers still live with their parents due to how hard it would be to pay rent with the little that they are making. One certainly cannot climb the economic ladder with such a wage. According to a report from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, there isn't a single state in the country where people making the minimum wage can afford to rent a one-bedroom apartment at fair market prices while working full-time. Even taking into account states and cities with higher minimum wages, the average minimum wage worker would need to work 79 hours a week to pay rent in a one-bedroom apartment and 97 hours for a two-bedroom apartment. Clearly, the current minimum wage does not give workers the opportunity to make a livelihood for themselves. And now, looking at how the current federal minimum wage has flatlined over the past 12 years, makes it clear that low wage earners are falling behind. They are working for less money thanks to inflation, making them poorer over time. Pew Research also points out that wage growth has largely gone to the highest earners, and a separate EPI analysis notes that it has also remained unequal by race, with significant widening gaps in wages between Black and white Americans, demonstrating how the current minimum wage contributes to wealth and racial inequality. Fortunately, there is a simple yet effective solution: raising the minimum wage. However, while the solution might seem simple, this is where it gets controversial. Now, one of the main arguments opponents of raising the minimum wage like to use is the loss of jobs. And specifically, they like to cite the recent Congressional Budget Office estimate, which found that increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour would cause 1.4 million Americans to lose their jobs by 2025. Um, First off, it is important to note that this same estimate also observed that income gains resulting from the wage increases are substantially greater than the reduction in income from job losses, thereby lifting nearly a million people out of poverty. 27 million Americans would also be positively affected by the increase. Second, the CBO's methodology is flawed. Arindarit Dube, a professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts and a research associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research, argues that the CBO's estimates are wrong due to its methodology. And the overall research that minimum wages hikes on unemployment are difficult to accurately pin down. He estimates that national minimum wage increase of $15 per hour using the CBO's report's evidence would lead to just under 500,000 lost jobs. In a recent op-ed for the Washington Post, he states that the report's assumptions about job losses are problematic and significantly out of step with modern research on the subject. When Dube focused on studies that looked at the overall low-wage workforce, the evidence on job losses were minute. In those cases, the job loss from the same 10% increase in average wage of affected workers amounts to maybe 0.5% in job loss. At that level of job loss, the wage gains far offset the losses. In another analysis that examined 138 state level minimum wage increases from 1979 to 2016 in the United States, Dube and colleagues found that the jobs paying below the minimum wage decreased since wages rose, but at least as many jobs were at the new higher wage, meaning jobs were upgraded, not destroyed. The number of low wage jobs barely budged. This finding held when populations of special concern, i.e., people with fewer educational credentials or young workers, were examined. This finding held as well even when the minimum wage was set at a fairly high rate compared with the state's median wage, the highest being around 60% of the median wage. No effect on unemployment at levels significantly above the minimum wage was found. The reasons why other studies did not reach the same conclusions is that they did not account for regional booms and busts. For example, when cities are thriving financially, wages can get bid up, which can be misinterpreted as a drop in low-wage jobs. Additionally, superstar cities like Seattle, which are cities where factors beside the minimum wage shapes wages on the low end, are sometimes incorrectly examined. Clearly, there is little correlation between raising the minimum wage and job losses, but there are numerous benefits, such as creating higher paying jobs and lifting millions of people out of poverty. Additionally, small businesses would also be benefited. A study released by the Fiscal Policy Institute focused on the impact of higher minimum wages on small businesses. At this point, I would like you to take some time to look at the graph released by this study. As you may have noted, the study found that between 1998 and 2001, the number of small business establishments grew twice as quickly in states with higher minimum wages, jumping from a 1.6% growth rate to 3.1% growth rate. Employment grew 1.5% more quickly, and annual and average payroll growth was also faster in higher minimum wage states. A raise to $15 an hour, which may not sound like a lot, would actually be a significant and much needed boost to the earnings of low wage workers, especially to those with families. It is, no pun intended, literally the minimum the government should do. Thank you.